All right, everyone. So with all the Aaron Rodgers rumors and speculations of a potential trade this week, that got me thinking, what would a mock draft look like with an Aaron Rodgers trade to, say, the New York Jets? So I wanted to see what that would look like in today's video. We're going to be doing a 4-round mock draft for the Green Bay Packers that includes an Aaron Rodgers trade to the New York Jets. Now, obviously, nothing of that sort is set in stone, and that might not even happen, and it might even be another team if he even gets traded. But just for the sake of things, we're going to do the New York Jets today and trade for their first-round pick and some other things as well, which we'll go over here in a second. If you're new here and want more Packers news analysis and updates, I cover free agency, the draft, and everything in between Green Bay Packers every single day. So if that does interest you, go down, click the subscribe button, leave a like on the video, and turn on post notifications to not miss any of the videos. I released a couple of videos this week on this whole situation, the Aaron Rodgers trade suitors, and then today the report that the Packers want multiple first-round picks, and the Jets would be willing to pay that. That's why we're doing the Jets today in this mock draft. If you want to go watch that, click the link right above. All right, so without further ado, if we bring up the draft screen, first we're going to get this trade sorted. So currently the Green Bay Packers are picking at 15. The New York Jets are picking at 13. So a trade for Aaron Rodgers, you would think you would at least get this year's first round. Now, what else you would get on top of that? Obviously, we don't know that. But for the sake of this mock draft, we're going to at least get this pick here. So if you were to go trade with the New York Jets at pick 13, you want pick 13. And then you're going to trade Aaron Rodgers. This says this trade will likely be accepted. This is just the PFF mock draft simulator. I don't think they really know what Aaron Rodgers would get in return, but just for the sake of things, we're going to go a first round this year, a second round next year. Now, maybe that's a conditional pick where if he plays, that turns into a first, or if he plays, that stays whatever it is. If he doesn't play, they don't get that pick at all. But I'm also very interested if the Jets would throw in a player in this trade, someone like Elijah Moore, who already wanted out. Now, given that might have just been because of Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, who's not there anymore, and would Elijah Moore want to go to another LaFleur with the Green Bay Packers? Who exactly knows, but it does interest me to see if the Jets would include someone like Elijah Moore, considering if the Packers do move on from Aaron Rodgers, I don't see them retaining Randall Cobb, and Elijah Moore could be a plug-and-play slot receiver for Jordan Love. Then we also added a 4th-round pick swap for the Green Bay Packers' 5th-round pick in this year's draft, just trying to get a little bit more compensation. Then if you go ahead and offer that trade, the trade is accepted. So in this scenario, I'm not saying this is what the Packers would get or they would even get this much, but just for this mock draft, we're getting Elijah Moore, so we kind of get a receiver already to replace Randall Cobb in the slot, a 2nd round next year, the 1st round this year, and a 4th round this year for obviously Aaron Rodgers, and a 5th round. Then the New York Jets are on the hook for just under $16 million this year, and the Packers are paying Aaron Rodgers a dead cap of $40 million this year. But then that's it. The Packers are done with Aaron Rodgers' contract. They'll have a lot of money in future years to build around someone like Jordan Love. All right, so if we go ahead and start this draft, the Chicago Bears are going to select Jalen Carter there. Interesting. I thought they would go Will Anderson, but they do go Jalen Carter. Bryce Young goes to the Texans here. That's, a lot of people thought that Bryce Young will be the first quarterback off the board. Stroud to the Colts. Tyree Wilson to the Seahawks here. Brian Breezy to the Lions, Anthony Richardson to the Raiders, Will Levis to the Falcons, Miles Murphy to the Panthers, Paris Johnson to the Eagles, Peter Skoronski to the Titans, and Quentin Johnston to the Texans. So obviously the Packers with pick 13 and 15 in this scenario could package those and move into the top 10 and draft someone like Miles Murphy or Brian Breezy, someone of those sorts. But considering we're already doing such a big trade with Aaron Rodgers, I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to stay put at 13 and 15. So right now at pick 13, the player that is sticking out to me is Brian Branch. The Packers have Adrian Amos, an impending free agent, Rudy Ford, an impending free agent. They have Darnell Savage on the roster at a whopping $7.9 million due to that 5th-year rookie option, but we all know Darnell Savage at this point probably isn't capable of being a starting safety on this defense. So the Packers are extremely thin at safety. Will they move someone like Rasul Douglas back? They could, but they still need someone back there that's extremely talented and can play multiple roles, and that's exactly what Brian Branch is from Alabama. He is by far the best safety in this draft class. If we look at his PFF stats here, he had an 89.5 grade in 2022, an 86.4 coverage grade, a really, really good 90.7 run defense grade, 15.8% forced incompletion rate, an extremely low 3.3 missed tackle rate. This dude does not miss tackles. He was tied for first in coverage stops with 19, tied for 10th in run stops with 24, tied for 8th in forced completions with 9, and he's extremely versatile. In this Alabama defense, he played a lot of slot, 569 snaps in slot this year, but he can also play a box safety, he can play deep, he can do multiple things, and that's exactly what the Packers defense needs. A jack-of-all-trades type of guy, kind of what they had with Micah Hyde back in the day, and we see what he turned into after the Packers got rid of him. And he's just such a sure tackler. He's only missed 4 missed tackles in his entire career at 174 total tackles. Absolutely insane. He is clearly the number 1 safety here, and the Packers have a huge need at safety. So at pick 13, we are going Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama. And just like that, the Packers are back on the board after Devin Witherspoon went to the New England Patriots here. So now with Jordan Love at the helm for next year and into the future years and drafting a defender with the first pick, at this point, you're probably looking to surround Jordan Love with offensive weapons, either a tight end or a wide receiver. And Michael Mayer really sticks out here. I usually am so against drafting tight ends in the first round, but I feel like he is different. Now, they could also go wide receiver with Jackson Smith and Jigba here, which honestly I would like, or even Jordan Addison. Any one of these 3 guys I would be happy with. But Mayer isn't just a tight end. This dude could pretty much be a receiver for you. He's good at blocking. He's just overall one of the better tight ends we've seen in a draft class in a long time. And 92.5 overall grade in 2022, 91.6 receiving grade, 2.44 yards per route run, 5.6 drop rate, 65.4% contested catch rate, good run block grade at 82.1. He had 67 receptions, 809 yards and 9 touchdowns. Last year, 840 yards and 7 touchdowns. The year before that, 450 yards and 2 touchdowns. This dude's been an absolute beast. And I feel like the Packers, if they were to go this route, they need to surround Jordan Love with talent, and their tight end room is very lacking of that. So drafting Michael Mayer here, I think would be a great idea. Like I said, Jackson Smith and Jigba would be a great pick as well, but I do like the thought of Michael Mayer in this offense under Jordan Love. So that's what we're going to do at pick 15 here, drafting tight end Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. Then to round off the rest of the picks in the first round, Christian Gonzalez, cornerback to the Commanders, Anton Harrison to the Steelers, Bijan Robinson to the Lions, Zay Flowers to the Buccaneers, Nolan Smith to the Seahawks, Jackson Smith and Jigba to the Chargers, Joey Porter Jr. to the Ravens, Jordan Addison to the Vikings, Lucas Van Ness to the Jags, Luke Musgrave to the Giants, Siaki Ika to the Cowboys, Broderick Jones to the Bills, Antonio Johnson to the Bengals, Cam Smith to the Broncos, Andre Carter II to the Chiefs, and Trenton Simpson to the Eagles. Then heading up to pick 45, the next pick for the Packers in round 2. Latu to the Steelers, Downs to the Texans, Torrance to the Cardinals, Dalton Kincaid to the Colts, Jamie Robinson to the Rams, Tanner McKee to the Seahawks, Eli Ricks to the Raiders, Kalijah Cansey to the Panthers, Mozzie Smith to the Saints, Nathaniel Dell to the Titans, BJ Ojolari to the Browns, Kaylee Ringo to the Jets, and Drew Sanders to the Falcons. So at this point, you already got a really good defender, a really good offensive weapon in Michael Mayer. Now the Packers' needs at this point, I think you have 2 glaring needs. You really need an edge player, and you could also use another lineman. You could use a tackle. Now, in this situation, will the Packers keep David Bakhtiari? We're not sure. I do believe they'll obviously retain Josh Nijman in a second-round tender, so he could play left tackle for you and Zach Tom at right tackle, but you could very well get a tackle here in the second round. But the player that's standing out to me the most at an even bigger need in my opinion, is Will McDonald IV from Iowa State. Now, McDonald's a very interesting prospect here at edge, 6'3", 236, so he's very light, definitely would have to put on some weight. But in terms of what the Packers usually draft at edge, they draft complete athletes, and that's exactly what Will McDonald is. We see in 2021, he had 13 sacks, and in 2022, he had 6 sacks and a 79.1 PFF grade with an 84.1 pass rush grade, a 92.1 true pass set pass rush grade, and a 16.7% pass rush win rate. He's the definition of a speed rusher, and the Packers just need edge rush depth to begin with. Preston Smith is 31 years old, and would they retain him in this situation? Kind of moving on from Aaron Rodgers, would they go into sort of a rebuild phase? Would they keep Preston Smith? Rashawn Gary coming off a torn ACL, when will he be back? Kingsley Enagbare showing a lot of promise, and you want to get more guys like him in the building at edge. You want to have as many edge rushers as possible. You can never have too many. So a second round pick here on edge after getting a safety, which is a big need, and a tight end, which is just a great weapon to have for Jordan Love. Getting an edge here would be huge, and Will McDonald fits that mold for the Green Bay Packers. He can come on during pass downs early on in his career and be a true speed pass rusher, something the Packers do need. So in this pick 45, we are going Will McDonald IV out of Iowa State. Here at pick 78 in the third round, Packers should just trade away third-round picks at this point. I think Sean Ryan was the only third-rounder from last year's draft to not play a single offensive snap, so that curse continues. Now, obviously, we don't know what he's going to turn into, and he could become a good player, but let's face it, the Packers' third-round draft resume is not good in the past. So if the Packers could trade this, I would say do it. But for this case, we're not going to be doing that. And I think the Packers should draft another lineman in the third round this year. And a couple tackles are sticking out to me. Blake Freeland from BYU and DeJuan Jones from Ohio State. Both have left tackle and right tackle versatility. Blake Freeland, most recently, the past 2 years, played just left tackle. And he's been a beast. 91.0 PFF grade this year, 81.7 the year prior. He's only allowed 1 sack in the last 3 seasons. He's been really, really good. A 90.7 pass block grade, an 87.9 run block grade. I feel like every year there's a BYU tackle with grades like this. And DeJuan Jones is very similar as well, but he's played right tackle for the past 2 seasons and has done an excellent job at that. An 82.6 grade this year, an 86.5 grade last year, and he's only allowed 3 sacks the last 3 years. An 85.0 run block grade, a 79.5 pass block grade. Both of these guys are monsters of offensive linemen, both standing in at 6'8". But in terms of what the Packers need more, if you say, okay, do they need a left tackle more or a right tackle more? I argue that it is right tackle because Josh Nijman looks more comfortable at left tackle. Zach Tom can play left tackle if they retain Bakhtiari, which they should. He's obviously going to be your left tackle for years to come. So at this point, I think you go DeJuan Jones just based on his resume, based on the fact that he started the last 2 years at right tackle and did an excellent job at it. So with this pick at pick 78 in round 3, we are going DeJuan Jones, tackle out of Ohio State. For the Packers' next pick here in the 4th round, they do have 2 4th-round picks due to the trade with the Jets, one at 112 and one at 116. I think I'm going to go for a wide receiver in the 4th round here. Obviously, getting Elijah Moore in the Jets trade in this scenario is good. He's a slot receiver, but you still could add one more wide receiver to that wide receiver room in the middle rounds here. Obviously, you have Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Samori Toure, and now Elijah Moore. Adding one more guy, a developmental guy that can play both the slot and the outside receiver positions will be good to do here. And out of these 4 guys, Palmer, Iosivas, Scott, and Mims, I do like Mims the most just based on the fact that Scott and Palmer kind of have drop issues. Iosivas played at Princeton. Marvin Mims, did well at a high-end school like Oklahoma. And if we take a look at his stats, he's been a pretty consistent wide receiver for the past 3 seasons at Oklahoma. 1,000 yards this year, 700 last year, 610 the year before that. Only 5 drops, a lot better of a drop rate than the other wide receivers. A nice 2.7 yards per route run, a 77.1 receiving grade, and just in general, I do like him. He's a nice deep threat wide receiver. So he's tied for 5th in deep yards with 602. So with this pick, we are going to go Marvin Mims, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. So for the last pick in this mock draft, since this is just a 4-rounder, I'm looking at the running back position because if the Packers do trade Aaron Rodgers, that $40 million cap hit for this year, $9 more million than they're going to pay him if he's on the team, is going to create a problem for them to get under the cap. They're going to have to do that before the new league year. And would trading Aaron Jones be one of the moves for them to do that? Now, they still obviously have A.J. Dillon, but if they were to move on from Aaron Jones, which if they don't this year, they probably will next year, I think you got to draft a running back in the middle rounds in this draft, kind of setting him up behind A.J. Dillon, letting him improve over the years and learn the system. And someone that really pops out to me is Dwayne McBride from UAB. Now, given he is playing against Conference USA defenses, but you cannot deny this dude's stats for the past 3 seasons. It's absolutely absurd. We see his PFF grades, a 94.1 this year, an 89.9 last year, and a 93.5 in 2020. If we look at his yards, he had 1,702 yards this year with 19 touchdowns, 1,366 yards last year with 13 touchdowns, and just under 500 yards in 2020 with 4 touchdowns, a 93.5 rushing grade, 92.1 zone grade, 84.9 gap grade, and 150.8 elusive rating, and a 4.6 yards after contact per attempt. This guy simply jumps off the charts in terms of running back. Like I said, it is at UAB, but you don't need this guy to start right away. He can learn the system, play behind A.J. Dillon or maybe even Aaron Jones as that 3rd running back, and you can have him for the future as a potential, 1st or 2nd running back, and I think he could compete for that. So with this pick, our last pick in this mock draft, we are going Dwayne McBride, running back out of UAB. All right, so now with that mock draft finished, let's quickly go over all of these picks real quick. Obviously, we traded Aaron Rodgers and a 5th round for the Jets 1st this year, a 2nd next year, a 4th this year, and Elijah Moore. Would a trade for Aaron Rodgers to the Jets look like this? It's anyone's best guess. But for this mock draft, that's what we came up with. Adding a slot receiver and Elijah Moore, as the Packers likely wouldn't retain Randall Cobb if they were to move on from Aaron Rodgers. Then with the Jets pick, drafting Brian Branch, an extremely versatile safety / slot corner, something the Packers could use desperately. They're extremely thin at safety. Brian Branch, probably one of the surest, if not the surest tacklers at defensive back in this year's draft. Just a solid player, and it would be a great pick at 13. Then at pick 15, drafting a monster of an offensive weapon in Michael Mayer here. The Packers haven't spent capital on a tight end in a long time, and I think they're due to have someone like Michael Mayer here at tight end. A nice security blanket, just a weapon for Jordan Love in general. Then in the second round, got a nice steal here, in my opinion. Will McDonald fell to pick 45. A kind of project edge rusher because he's a little light, but he's a really, really good speed rusher, and in general, something the Packers need, and they just need depth at edge in general. So Will McDonald out of Iowa State here. Then in round 3, they drafted another lineman, just like last year. I went DeJuan Jones because he played primarily right tackle for the past 2 seasons and only allowed up 3 sacks in the past 2 seasons as well. Actually, 3 sacks in the past 3 seasons. And the Packers could use a nice backup right tackle there. Obviously, I think they retain Josh Nijman. They still have Zach Tom, and do they keep Bakhtiari under the situation? We don't know. But getting another tackle, I think, would be good in this draft. In round 4, we go Marvin Mims. There was a lot of receivers around this spot on the board, but Mims stood out to me the most. A lower drop rate, can play the slot, can play outside. Had 3 years of decent production at Oklahoma. Then in our last pick of this mock draft, we went Dwayne McBride, running back. Do the Packers retain Aaron Jones under this situation? You know, they kind of have to get under the cap if they have a $40 million cap hit for Aaron Rodgers trade. So would they keep him? We're not sure. But nonetheless, even if they did keep him, I think drafting a running back in the middle rounds here is a good idea, just to have that third guy and potential first or second guy in future years. And Dwayne McBride's numbers over the past 3 years at UAB, off the charts. But yeah, in terms of an Aaron Rodgers trade, I think this is a really, really good draft to build for the future. Then you still have either a second round next year or whatever that trade would entail for next year's draft as well, to add more to your team around Jordan Love. You'll see a full year of Jordan Love. You're adding a target like Michael Mayer. You're adding Elijah Moore and Marvin Mims and Dwayne McBride in the sequence, kind of adding more talent, young talent, to build towards the future with a new quarterback. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of this mock draft under an Aaron Rodgers trade situation? Are there other players on the board when I was drafting that you thought, okay, that would fit better? Leave that down in the comments below. But I'll catch you on the next one. Appreciate everyone for watching, and as always, go Pack Go.